Back from 2005 to 2008, I was a serial burglar around the city of Dallas. And man, just as I passed the pipe back to Texas, the window on my right blows out and shatters. And one of the cops screamed out loud, "We got him. We got the Uptown Burglar." In my story, the angels don't have wings. The SWAT team saved my life that day.
Welcome to Inner Pump, where we help driven individuals get the most out of life and build the inner mastery to drive growth, confidence, discipline, and mental fortitude. Where overcoming adversity means doing the things you know you should do. Real topics, real people, real business. I'm your host, Ajee. Let's get it. This is Inner Pump.
Let's get it.
That was funny, man, when he just dropped on me. I learned a lot about Ajee just like just now. More than the first 25 minutes of talking to him. 2 words.
We have an old mutual friend, one of my old coaches. Damon is really good friends with him. But hold on. I just spoiled it, man. We got a special guest in the building, man. 3-time best-selling author, world-renowned speaker. And when I say world, I mean this man travels the world. Motivator, inspirator, former collegiate quarterback. I think we can say former.
Yeah, former.
Yeah. Right.
I don't think he's suiting up now.
Yeah, I'm not.
I saw you throw it.
I can still throw 65 yards.
I don't know.
I'll be 48 next month. I can still throw 65.
I got the cleats. I can strap them up. Let's go run some routes.
Brother, I got you, man.
Except if Pat Tillman's running after you, then
that's
we're
true,
out.
man. I took some hits from Pat Tillman, man. He was good, man. He's the most competitive person I've ever played against in my life, man. He was a ferocious dude on the field. Great guy after the game, man. Come up real nice, but I mean, that dude, man, he was very serious during the game against Arizona State. Yeah, he's a beast. He's a beast.
But as you guys know, we got Damon West in the building, baby. David, how you feeling, man?
I'm well, man. I'm well. Jay, thanks a lot for having me, man. Yo, man, this is like really cool that we actually got this to work out. We had been trying to get this date set and had all these speaking engagements for the next several days and going to talk to Dallas SWAT, and then bam, here we are.
Man, momentum. Crazy.
Yeah, that's it, man. You got to ride the momentum when you got it.
So the story for the listeners, Ajee and I mentioned in a previous episode, I went to one seminar in my life, and it actually was one where we didn't know who the speakers were going to be. So there was a bunch
we knew two. We knew two,
but there was a bunch of extras that, we were just really trusting Andy Frisilla and Ed Milet, who threw this big thing together, that they would deliver the value that we paid for. Right. And one of the speakers was Damon West. And I sat right next to Ajee, and I'm like, we have got to get this guy on. He is everything. It's rare that Ajee and I meet somebody that's energy is like ours.
Yeah.
Like it's a multiplier in the room. I feel it.
Yeah. High key.
And it's awesome. So thank you I know you're busy as hell, and it's awesome to finally get this on.
Yeah, it's good, man. I'm grateful to be here, man. This is it. You got to be in the room for things to happen, and you're giving me a chance to be in the room. And who knows what happens with this, man? People hear this story, it goes out and impacts someone's life, it changes their life, whatever it is. You've got to be in the room to make it happen. So thanks for letting me be in the room today, guys.
Oh man, anytime. So let's get started. Let's get this rolling.
Let's roll, man. Anything, go for it.
Let's go from step one. Coffee bean.
So it's ironic that we're here in Dallas, Texas right now. In fact, this neighborhood in Dallas, I asked y'all what the name of this neighborhood was, right? And there was a reason why I asked y'all that. Because back from 2005 to 2008, I was a serial burglar around the city of Dallas. And I was a meth addict. And I was the head of a bunch of other meth addicts that were breaking into people's houses. And it started out in the Uptown neighborhood of Dallas. They called them the Uptown Burglaries. They called me the Uptown Burglar. That's a moniker I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. Not proud of it, but that's what they called me. And so from 2005 to 2008, we ran around breaking into people's houses, condos all over throughout Dallas, Uptown area. And we basically stole people's property for meth. But more than that, we stole people's sense of security, because that's what happens when you burglarize somebody. You don't just take their property, man. You take their sense of security. And I don't know if my victims ever get that back. And here's the deal. The state of Texas has laws, man. They have laws that say that you could never apologize to the victim of a crime that you commit. It's a felony. You'll go back to prison for that. So I'm never going to be able to apologize to my victims for the things that went on. Because people ask me all the time, like, have you ever apologized to them? No, I'm not going back to prison. That doesn't serve anybody for me to do that. So I work a 12-step program recovery called AA. And in AA, we have these things, we have the steps. And the 8th step is where you make a list of all the people you've harmed. The 9th step is where you go out and you're willing to make amends to all those people, except when to do so will cause you or them harm. It would cause me harm to go back to prison, right?
Facts.
So instead of making an apology to somebody you can't make an apology to, you go out and you do what's called a living amends. And a living amends is when you go out there and you just do good deeds, man. You just go do good works and you expect nothing in return. And that's what my life is today. Today, I'm out there going and doing these living in men's everywhere I go. The story of the coffee bean. But back then in 2008, you know, not too far from here, I lived in the Oak Lawn area of Dallas. I had this girl I lived with named Jenny. We lived in this little, it wasn't a great apartment, little rundown apartment right there on Holland Avenue. You know where Holland is?
The Post.
Yep.
No, this is after Post. I got evicted from Post Uptown Village back in 2005.
10 minutes from here.
Yeah, 10 minutes from here. Yeah. So, yeah, you weren't far, man. But so 2008, July 30th, 2008 to be exact. I'm sitting on this little rundown couch and I'm sitting there smoking meth with my meth dealer, this guy named Tex. And as I'm telling him, man, I was like, Tex, you don't want to be here, man. The cops just picked up my partner in crime, this guy named Dustin. They got him in a stolen car. So they got my partner in crime in custody, which means I know it's just a matter of time before they get to me. And man, just as I pass the pipe back to Tex, the window on my right blows out and shatters. And then tumbling across the living room floor is a little canister going end over end. It's smoking on one side. Y'all, I know what that canister is about to do. I've seen movies like this before, right? But now I'm sitting in the movie, man, and man, it's like slow motion. I try to get out of there as fast as I could, but it was like running in quicksand, and boom, the flashbang grenade goes off in my face. Bright white light, loud noise. They take me down, and when I came to, when I can see and hear again, there was a cop standing over me in full SWAT riot gear. His boot was on my chest. The barrel of an assault rifle was digging in my eye socket. He's screaming, "Don't move, don't move." And man, I just looked up at this cop, and I was like, man, don't worry, don't worry. And I knew it was over. And one of the cops screamed out loud, "We got him. We got the Uptown Burglar." And you know, that was 15 years ago, man. 15 years ago in a couple months from when we recorded this. Tomorrow in Dallas, one of the reasons I'm here is I get to go speak to the SWAT team that took me down.
Yeah,
Because-
I just got chills.
And the thing about it is, the reason why I'm the one that pushed this. They didn't call me up. I said, I pushed this. I wanted to go talk to them. And when the lieutenant from SWAT's like, "All right, what is it you want to say?" I said, "Well, first of all, I want to thank y'all because you saved my life." You know, in my story, the angels don't have wings. In my story, the angels have assault rifles, shields, and helmets. They come through the window. They bust down the door. The SWAT team saved my life that day. But besides just wanting to go and thank them, I want them to see an example of someone that got it right. Because they see a lot of other examples, right, of the guys that don't get it right. That's what they do every day. They take out the trash, and eventually you just feel like you're taking out the same trash because you can take out the same piece of trash more than one time if you're a law enforcement officer. And a lot of law enforcement officers, man, they live in a very negative world, and society has come down on them pretty hard. And so what I can give back to law enforcement, and I try to do all over the country, is to go out and share this story with them, to show them an example of someone that got it right. But more importantly, I want to give them the story of the coffee bean. Because the coffee bean, I think, can help anybody in any circumstance. No matter where you are in life, if you're a corporation, you're a sports team, whatever, you're a law enforcement division. And here's the story of the coffee bean. In Dallas County Jail, I ran into this other inmate, a guy named Mr. Jackson. We'll call him Mr. Jackson for the story. Mr. Jackson is an old black man, been in and out of prison all of his life. Most positive guy I've ever met. Like, this guy had a smile on his face everywhere he went, man. You couldn't knock the smile off of Jackson's face. And every morning, he'd come up to my cell, to my bunk, and he'd pick me up like a ray of sunshine in that dark place, right? So one morning he comes up, he's got a cup of coffee in his hands, a smile on his face, and he's telling me, he's like, "Man, listen, these fools telling you got to be in a gang, don't listen to them." He said, "But let me tell you what prison's going to be like." And he tells me, he said, "Prison is like a pot of boiling water. You have three choices how you're going to respond to this pot of boiling water. You can be like the carrot that becomes soft, the egg that becomes hard in the boiling water, or a coffee bean which changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee." And that's what he's telling me is the formula for turning my life around anywhere I am inside of prison. Be a coffee bean. In fact, the last words he ever said to me were, "Be a coffee bean." But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But I wanted to throw out the coffee bean early on because I want everybody to understand that's the premise for everything that's going on in my life, being a coffee bean, because I became a coffee bean. And whenever Dallas SWAT arrested me, they took me to Dallas County Jail that day. They processed me in, fingerprints and mugshot. They set my bond at $1.4 million. And I mean, there's 9,000 people in the county jail right down the road from here at Lou Sterrett. 9,000 people. One of the biggest jails in America. No one else, not murderers, not child molesters, not rapists, had a bond that high, right? And my crimes are property crimes. No one was ever home. I never saw my victims. They never saw me. No one got hurt.
Nothing was physical.
No physical. Nothing was there. No weapons were used. These are property crimes around meth, but the Dallas County sent me a clear signal with my bond. You're not going to get out of this one. And we're going to take you to a trial, and we're going to make an example out of you. And man, they did.
quick too, right?
Yeah, I mean, like 10 months later, I'm in a courtroom, man.
Well, I'm saying the jury decided in
10 minutes?
I've heard a story.
yeah, 10
a story
minutes?
of
Yeah,
this that was just-
and it was a 6-day
and
trial.
you got your family in the
Yeah,
in
the trial lasts for a week, man, and it's like, man, all this evidence, and the evidence of my guilt is overwhelming of the crime of engaging in organized criminal activity, RICO. So everybody in America is talking about RICO right now. I went down. That's what I went down for. I went down for RICO as the mastermind. So let me tell you how a RICO works. If you want to understand how RICO,
Please, let's get into it.
Here's how
Please,
RICO
please.
works.
You studied somewhere this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, whenever I was in prison, I was trying to get myself out. I literally had to research. It's criminal.
What did they call that room?
What's that?
In the prison where everybody goes and just it was like the
law
room.
library.
The law
The law
library.
library.
Yeah. So in the state of Texas, RICO is 71.02 of the Criminal Justice Code, right? I know everything about the RICO law. And they enacted these RICO laws in the early 90s to combat criminal street gangs, Crips, Bloods, think about that kind of thing, right? But RICO really came from the federal system when they were going to take down the mob and organized crime. So racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. Texas's version is a lot like the version in Georgia because that's what everybody's talking about. You want to talk about Georgia's RICO? Let's talk about the RICO. Organized crime statute, a RICO, is the most vague prosecutorial tool there is, man. And I argue when I was in prison that it's too vague to even be legal because here's what a prosecutor can do with RICO. In a RICO conspiracy, it's called the law of parties. That means there's other people committing crimes for one purpose. They get the guy at the top of the pyramid, which was me in this case, all right? They got the guy at the top of the pyramid who they want to get. That's the only one they really want to get. So everybody else below the pyramid, they've all got crimes that are on them. But if they could prove that the guy at the top, me, committed 2 crimes in this concert of all these other crimes going on, all they got to do is prove that I commit 2 crimes with at least 1 or 2 of these other people going on in a concert with each other, then I can be tried for organized crime. And if I'm tried for organized crime, they can put the crimes of everybody else on me. That's legal in an organized crime statute. So what you're seeing over there in Georgia, everybody wants to talk about, this is what I don't think, the news stations don't explain this really well. All the other crimes that everybody else committed, they're going on the guy at the top, and that's legal.
So do the people that committed the crimes, do they just get to walk away free?
If the prosecutor wants, the prosecutors have way too much power in America, and that's the prosecutor. One of the biggest problems, one of the cogs in the wheel in the criminal justice systems in America, is that prosecutors have way too much power. And I've argued, and today in this life, brother, I went back to school and got a master's in criminal justice since I got out of prison. I'm a professor at the University of Houston now. I teach a class called Prisons in America. Like I'm credentialed. Like, and I'm going to tell you what I tell my class. Prosecutors have too much power in this country because they have discretion of how much they want to prosecute. They can influence the bond or whether or not you get out. So we've given the prosecutors way too much power. 95% of the people that get charged with a felony plea out to a deal. 95% of the people that get a felony in this country, in the feds, do not even get their Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Because if you don't go to a trial, you don't have counsel, right? So that's what the federal prisons, that's what the federal system does, man. And the state systems are the same. So when you are tried for a RICO case, you're the guy at the top. I'm sitting in my trial, man, and I can pick out the stuff that, you know, the evidence they're putting on. Like, yeah, I was at that crime. I remember that. But then I'm like, well, I wasn't at that crime. I don't even know what they're talking about. And you know, part of me is like, man, I got cut out of that deal, you know, but I'm about to go take the heat for all of it, you know? And that's what the jury saw. The jury's instructions were, hey, by the guidelines of the RICO Act, is this guy guilty or not? And I was guilty of everything, man. I did it all, man. I did it all. They got me, man. And so they sentenced me to 65 years that day, which is a life sentence in the state of Texas, you know? So there I am. I just got sentenced to 65 years in prison. It's a life sentence. And man, I mean, it's like getting kicked in the stomach. My mom's there. My dad's there. And right after the trial is over, I get one last conversation with my mom and my dad. And my mom is telling me, you can't go get one of these white hate groups, these Aryan Brotherhood type gangs. You can't go get a bunch of tattoos. No tattoos, no gangs is what she says. You come back as the man we raised or don't come back at all. And she's pissed. She's upset. Powerful. Yeah. And so I go back to my pod in Dallas County Jail, and that's where I'm asking everybody in county jail, man, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And everybody I'm talking to, man, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, they're all saying the same thing. You got to get into a gang. You won't survive without a gang. But Mr. Jackson, he's the only guy in there that's got a whole different tune to him. He's positive. He's got a smile on his face. But he's telling me real world stuff that I'm going to need in this place. And he's telling me the first thing you need to understand about prison. He said prison's all about race. Race runs the whole institution. He said all the inmates want it to be about race. Everybody breaks in their own racial group in prison. So he's telling me when you walk in, the white gangs get the first dibs on you because you're white. You know, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Aryan Circle, the White Knights, the Woods. After that, it's the black gangs, the Crips, the Bloods, the Gangster Disciples. They're all going to tee off on you because the white gang's going to send them after you too. That's who sent the gangs after you, the white gangs, right? But he said if you survive all that, and you can survive all that, you'll earn the right to walk alone. He said the strongest man in prison always walks alone. And he told me the truth about fighting. He said you don't have to win all your fights. You just have to fight all your fights. He said some days you're going to win and some days you're going to lose. He said it's okay to lose. Just get back up and keep fighting. And that's when he tells me the story of the coffee bean. He said, and here's how it's going to go. And he tells me the story of the coffee bean. And he's telling me what it's going to be like my first day in prison. He's like, look, he said, whenever you walk in the door and they take you to the life sentence building, do not run to your bunk like the guys that are scared. He said, man, you put your bags down, put your back against the wall, and just let it happen on day one. And I'm like, what happened, dude? What are you talking about? And he said, your heart check. Heart check's the most important fight you ever get into. He said, this is a test. They're going to test you immediately. He said, a white guy's going to come to you first because you're white. He said, he's going to ask you one relevant question. What gang do you want to be a part of? And he said, man, get this guy out of your face as fast as you can and get ready because the second guy comes up, he's not coming to talk to you, man. He is coming to hurt you. He's an enforcer. He said, man, when he gets within range, put your fist in his mouth. He said, hit this dude as hard as you can and get the first lick on that fight. And the last thing he ever said to me, the last words he ever spoke to me on earth, be a coffee bean. That's what he said. Be a coffee bean, West. And you know, I remember how I felt when I heard that for the first time. Like, I can do that, man. I've got 3 options, and I know what they are, and I can do that. And that's the power of the message. It's like, now we can break this down. We know that there's going to be days that we're the carrot, because that's being sad. There's going to be days that we're the egg. That's being mad. And I have a lot more egg days than I have carrot days, right? But I have a third choice. The choice is always mine. I can choose to be a coffee bean, because anytime I want, I can stop my day and start it over. Having a bad day, stop it. Start it over, man. You know, Ed Milet talks about that. You know, this whole thing about a 24-hour cycle of a day, that's crazy, man. You can start and stop your day anytime you want. So I went off to prison, y'all, and it was a baptism by fire. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. I went to the Mark Stiles unit in Beaumont, Texas. One of the toughest prisons in Texas, man. One of the toughest prisons in America. And remember, I teach a class called Prisons in America. I know about tough prisons, right? Credentialed, man. I'm credentialed now, so they can't just dismiss me. But so I go to Stiles, and like in the first 5 minutes that I'm there, they walk me into the life sentence building, and on Stiles, let me paint you a picture of Stiles. It's a maximum security level 5. It's a super max prison, and they call it level 5 because it's the highest security level there is in Texas, and it's a place they take people with new life sentences. And on that building, on that unit, there's 3,000 people in the Stiles unit, 3,000 inmates, but 7 building where they take the lifers, 432 people. Everybody's got life. Everybody's got life. And most people have real aggravated life sentences where they're not going to see parole for at least 30 years. Some guys don't ever see parole at all. I lived in a pod one time, had 48 guys on it. 12 of them were life without parole guys. These are nuclear bombs, man. These guys can go off anytime they want. They're never going home, right?
Did you ever question God at that moment? Like, God, why am I here? Like, I know what I did was wrong, but I didn't deserve this.
Oh, I was so pissed at God.
Right.
And let me tell you what happened between God and I. So I'm going through that first 2 months of prison, and I probably got in 3 dozen fights those first 2 months, and I lost 75% of those fights, man. I got my ass kicked all over that prison. But I won. I won all my fights because I showed up to fight. Because that's what Jackson said. You don't have to win those fights. Jackson said, man, these people in prison, they just want to watch a fight. They call it a free show as opposed to like pay-per-view. It's a free show because it happens right in your living room. Your living room is a day room, right? So you got these people boxing around you while you're watching TV. But I just showed up to fight. It took 2 weeks to get to the white gangs. After that, it was the black gangs, just like Jackson said it would be. It was on a Friday, 6 weeks into prison. I get jumped, man, and they beat the hell out of me that day. Saturday morning, I wake up, and I'm like, all right, man, I'm broken. They finally broke me, and I was done. And so I went down to the chapel. My plan was this. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to come back to my cell, and I'm going to hang myself on the top bunk. I'm done, man. I'm done. I'm over. I'm done. So I go to that church service that Saturday morning. I'm standing there just looking at the front, and I get a tap on my shoulder. And I look back, and it's this little old lady named Miss D. Miss D's like 85 years old or something like that. A little old lady. And she taps me on the shoulder. She's a volunteer chaplain. She taps me on the shoulder. She says, Mr. West, come with me. So I go with her to her office, and she sits me down. She's like, she said, Mr. West, I can see that something's bothering you today. She said, what's wrong? And, man, I'm thinking to myself, man, there's 200 inmates in this chapel, man. Something's bothering everybody in this room. How does she pick me out? Got to be a God thing, right? Yeah. But, man, I just start going off. I was like, Miss D, I can't take it anymore. And I told her what I was going to do. And she was just real calm. She said, Mr. West, you can't kill yourself. You can't give up on God. And I'm like, God, what do you mean God, man? How can God create a place so wicked and evil and sinister as this prison, Miss D? Don't talk to me about God. And she was just calm. She said, Mr. West, you're not the first person to get angry with God. She said, the Bible's full of people that got angry with God. She said, but they all come back to God because they learn what the secret to faith is. And I'm like, Miss D, I need to know what the secret is right now.
Come on.
She said, if you're going to pray, don't worry. And if you're going to worry, don't pray. She said, you can't have it both ways. And that's what you want to do in this life. She said, you're either going to let God drive the car or you're going to drive the car. She said, but the last time you tried to drive it, you parked it in a prison. So choose who gets those keys today. Choose wisely. She told me to get out of her office. You know, sent me on my way. I mean, she let me go. And, you know, typically if you tell someone in prison you're going to kill yourself, they're not going to just let you go. But I think she was so tapped into God that she knew that I was going to run with that.
Something about you. And that's what I wanted to ask a question. I don't think I've heard anybody ask you about Mr. Jackson. How many other people had he told the coffee bean story to, inmates that are going into prison that didn't do anything with it?
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. I don't know because I don't have a ton of information about how and who he told it to. But when we get to the end of the story, I found Mr. Jackson, and I'll tell you about how I found him, and it has to do with the answer to your question right there. At least one person is the answer to your question because I'm going to tell you that's how he found me.
Because I think you're big on your energy, you know, not infecting people, but affecting people with your energy. And I think even in a dark moment for you, I think what I'm getting at is he saw something, and so did Miss D.
Yeah.
In you, just something about just an aura, a presence, potential.
You're so right.
Something's there.
And here's the deal: he's telling me in county jail, he said you're a light, and people are going to want to extinguish your light. You don't. They don't want a light inside that dark place. It's prison, man. They don't want a light like you. They're going to try to extinguish. They're going to try to kill you. Is what he's saying. But I realized that Mr. Jackson talked about energy. That energy attracts other kind of energy. So if you're negative all the time, you walk around the mean look, you'll attract these negative people. But he said if you're positive, walk around with a smile on your face, you'll attract the other coffee beans. And it made me realize that there were like 4 of us that hung out in county jail around each other. Jackson, me, and these other 2 guys. And I thought to myself, man, these are positive guys too. All 4 of us are pretty much coffee beans by his definition. And Jackson found me. I didn't find him. He found me because of my energy, you know?
Yes.
And we didn't have that long together in county jail. Remind me at the end to get to the story of how I found Mr. Jackson.
I will. I think listeners want more prison stories.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they're going to watch. Tell us the shower story.
Oh, let me set up the shower story first. So that Friday after I get jumped, so Saturday
People
I go
are like, the shower story? Where's it?
yeah, he's talking about the guy that tried to rape me in the shower. That's the one y'all want, right?
Yeah. That's the one. That's the one.
That's coming. So Saturday, I had that conversation with Miss D. I go back to my cell and I pray. I start like meditating and praying, like how can I get through this? And Monday morning it came to me, man. I woke up Monday morning, 6 weeks into prison. I'm still fighting the black gangs to this point. The only thing I haven't used to earn respect in this place is my athletic ability. And God blessed me to be a tremendous athlete in life, man. I was a Division I starting quarterback, man. And the only reason why I haven't used my athletic ability, because the rec yard where you play sports, it's the most intimidating place I've ever seen. The most segregated place I've ever seen. Remember Jackson said prison was all about race? Everybody wants it to be about race? Dude was spot on. The rec yard in the Life Sentence building, every sport is segregated by the color of your skin. I'll walk you through the yard real quick. Please. You walk out to the rec yard. You got a sand volleyball court. Whites and Hispanics only. No blacks in the sand. Handball court. All the races can play handball. You want to play doubles and partner up? Your partner, same skin color as you. You can't mix his races out there. The weight stack. Just like you see in prison movies, man. Everybody wants to push that iron in that prison. And everybody gets to lift weights. All the races can lift weights. But if you want someone to spot you, someone to work out with you, your partner, your spotter, got to be the same skin color as you. You can't mix the races out there. You can't even sit down and eat a meal at a table on the Life Sentence building with someone of a different race. Race is everything, man. We couldn't have this table right here in prison, man. Race is everything. So that Monday morning, 6 weeks into prison, I'm looking at myself in my cell mirror, and I don't like the guy that looks back at me, man. That guy looked back at me is full of fear, man. I'm sick of living in fear. Human beings, we're not made to live in fear, man. We're not made to cower down like that. We're made to be bold and stand up. So I go out to the rec yard, man, and this one sentence is going through my head. This coach in college, he said this sentence to me, man, and it made so much sense. It was like the most powerful sentence I ever heard, and it's 20 letters and 10 words. Most powerful sentence. If it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me. It's almost like a beat going through my head. If it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me. And I go out to the rec yard, man. I pass through that big gate. I pass up all those other sports that I just told you about, and I went straight to the basketball court. Who y'all think runs the basketball court?
Blacks only.
The blacks, man.
Hey.
The brothers.
That's the
they run it,
fastest
man.
way to get respect, though.
Man, but listen, man, I know, but here's the thing I know. If I go play basketball with these guys and I can get one of these games, I know that sports can make me whole because I know that in America, man, sports is the great uniter.
Come on.
Sports brings people together in this country like nothing else can. Man, before there was Martin Luther King Jr.,
Jackie
it was
Robinson.
Jackie Robinson,
That's
brother.
right.
Before you integrated lunch counters, you integrated locker rooms, man. So I know that sports can make me whole. So, man, I go out there that Monday morning, I get myself in a basketball game. Most brutal basketball I've ever played. It's not 5-on-5, man. It's 9-on-1, man. So but I learned. I went out there every day for a week, man, and earned my respect out there from those guys. I learned two things about adversity. Adversity is never as bad as you think it's going to be, and you're always capable of way more than you think you are because how we think matters. And sometimes we let overthinking get in the way of overcoming. So after a week on the rec yard, I'd finally earned my respect. I made my bones out there, and so. The blacks told me, hey, you don't have to worry about the rest of the time you're here. You're good to go with us. And, man, they're coming by my cell door every day, man. They're like, the black guys are banging on my cell. Let's go play some basketball, Wes. Let's go hoop it up. So now I'm the only white guy out there, and I'm allowed to be out there. But those guys made a promise to me that day that they could never keep. You can't be a member of one race and keep somebody from your own race off of another guy from another race. That's suicide, man. Your own race will kill you. And I did something that I've always done my entire life, man. I took a shortcut. I've been a corner cutter my entire life, man. And that was the last corner I swore I would ever cut because that was a big corner to cut. I tried to cut the corner to earn respect in that place. I was tired of fighting, so I thought maybe I could use sports to do it. So I'm coming off the rec yard about 2 weeks after that basketball court story. I'm coming off the rec yard, and I'm getting ready to go take a shower. And my cellmate, Carlos, man. Carlos is bouncing around. He's waiting for me to come in the pod. He grabs me. We go in the stairwell and we talk. Under the stairwell, there's no cameras, right? He said, man, I gotta tell you something. He said, man, when you go to the shower today, Blackjack's waiting in the shower. He's going to rape you. Now, Blackjack is the biggest rapist on the block, man. This guy is he's like 6'4", 260, big black guy, loves to rape white guys, does it with a knife. He's HIV positive. This guy is death in several different ways, man. And I'm like, well, man, I'm just not going to take a shower today, man. He said, you're an idiot. You have to go take a shower today. Because he said, if Blackjack doesn't rape you today, he may rape someone else, and that's going to be on you too now. Now you got twice the problems you once had. You got to face it. He said, you're on the track, and the train is coming. What are you prepared to do? And I'm like, Carlos, man, dude, he's got a knife, man. I don't have a knife. Man, Carlos is about this. Carlos whips a knife out of his pants about this long. I don't even know where he's hiding this thing, man. He puts this fucking blade in my hand, man. And I hold this thing and I twist it around in my hand, and it's just a piece of steel that's sharpened up to a razor's edge. It's got duct tape around it. And I hold it for a second. I give it back to him. I'm, man, Carlos, man, I've never fought with a knife before. This guy will kill me, man. He's fought with a knife for years, man. There's got to be another weapon, another way. He said, there is. He said, meet me back in the cell. So I go up to 45 cell, our cell, G-Pod 45 cell. So I go up to the cell and I wait for Carlos. About 5 minutes later, he comes in. He got some tools in his hands. Now, in the Texas prison system, there's no air conditioning. There's no AC in Texas prisons. All we have in prison to keep us cool is these little bitty fans, right? Mm-hmm. And he takes apart my little bitty fan and he cuts the motor out of it, a little 5-pound motor, man. And he puts it in this mesh commissary bag and he starts swinging it around. He said, this is your weapon today. It's like a medieval weapon, like a ball and chain flail, right? So he's swinging around the cell. He said, do exactly what I tell you. So he said, when you go into the shower, go in there. They got a little change area off to the side and one shower in the back. It's a one-man shower. He said, go in there, get the shower water on real high, get it steamy in there, and go to that little change area and hide off to the side. Press yourself up against the wall and just wait. He said, when Blackjack pops his head through that door, hit him in the head with this fan motor as hard as you can. He said, now your first hit is not going to kill him. You're going to stun him. But use that opportunity to go out there and bash his brains out of his skull. He said, West, do not stop swinging this thing till you see brains coming out of his head.
Oh, so he wanted you to kill him?
Wanted me to kill him. And everybody wanted me to kill him because he's the biggest rape. He's like a lion, man. Everybody wants to kill the lion, like kill this guy, Mm-hmm. And they see a vehicle in me to do it. They've all been talking about it, apparently. I mean, that's what I found out later on. Like, they're all like, yeah, we'll get West. We could try to get West to kill him. They just feed me to the lion, man. But I got no choice because he's coming for me. And Carlos is telling me the reason why he's coming for you is because you went out there and played basketball with those guys. He said, I told you, don't go out there with the blacks. He said, but you went out there anyway. And now you got some attention. You got the worst attention there is from the biggest rapist in prison. And the reason why they call him Blackjack, because he's black and he loves to jack white guys' asses. That's how he got the name Blackjack. He's a booty bandit, booty pirate, right? So I'm like, all right. So I go to the shower. I do everything he said. I sit back and I wait and I wait. And man, here he comes. He pops his head through the door. And man, I swung this thing as hard as I could. And he raises up at the last second, hits him in the chest, like a loud, sickening thud. I missed his head, but it shoots him out of the shower. He drops his knife on the ground. And man, I'm on this dude, man. I got this fan mode in this thing and I'm bashing up against it. I hear ribs cracking under this thing, man. And I'm like, I'm getting him, you know, but I can't get to his head. I throw the bag on the ground. I'm trying to get his hands off. I'm kicking his hands off his head, man. Well, two of his gang brothers flew up the stairs. He's a Mandingo warrior. This is the guys I've been playing basketball with, right? They fly up the stairs. They're like, West, don't lay another hand on that dude. Let him go. And I'm like, I'm trying to tell him, man, this dude tried to rape me, man. They're like, he's a rapist, man. That's what he does. He's our brother, though. So you can't hit this dude on the ground. The only rule in prison fighting is you can't hit a man when he's on the ground. That's enough to get you hurt or killed. And I'm like, man, this dude tried to rape me, man. He said, dude, you had a weapon. He had a weapon. It's over. It's squash. We're going to let you live. Beat your feet. So I grab my bag. I go to my cell. I throw the bag down on the ground, man. I start crying like a baby, man. That adrenaline is burning off. Right. And I'm laying there in a fetal position in my cell. And when I wake up, I'm starving. I'm famished, man. And I'm like, man, what time is it? I see the sunlight coming through the cell door. And I'm like, okay, man, it's last chow time because the doors are rolling. I can hear the doors rolling. I'm like, man, I got to go get some food. It's last chow. Dude, it was breakfast. I passed out for 12 hours, man. I was out. That adrenaline burned off. I mean, just think about you're going to this situation, life or death. This guy gets a hold of you. He's going to rape you, and you're going to die from it anyway. I mean, Carlos told me before in the shower, he said, you'll never leave this place alive. You know that, right? He said either he's going to do something to you today that you're going to wish you were dead, or you got to kill him. They're never letting you go if you kill another inmate. All that burned off. It's breakfast time, first chow. And so, man, I'm getting up. I'm looking around, and I feel myself. I don't have any cuts on me because I look at the bag over there. The bag's full of blood, man. It's his blood, not mine, right? He's HIV positive. So I'm like, man, I'm good. But I got to walk at the cell door. I don't know what's going to happen. I walk at the cell door, man. Somebody could stick a piece of steel in me, whatever, man. Anything's possible. But I walk out that cell door, and it's a whole different prison. I never had to fight again. Everybody was nice to me now. Because everybody saw that I spoke the only language everybody speaks. Yeah, but everybody saw that I spoke the only language everybody speaks in prison. That's violence, man. Everybody speaks violence. You have to become fluent in violence to live in prison. Either you speak violence to some other people, or other people speak violence to you. But you become fluent in the language of violence.
How did that violence help you in the actual world when you got out?
So in the actual world, one of the biggest adjustments when I got out of prison was like people bumping into you in public, right? You got a lot of rude people out there, man. People bump. There's not a lot of consequence for your decision. I think it's too lax in society sometimes. I like the people get away with. They get away
like
with saying
in the mall.
Well, but people get away with saying a lot of stuff. There's a lot of crazy stuff on social media, man. I came from a world where, I mean, you gotta put an address on that, man. If you say something like that, someone's coming to your house and slapping you in the face, man. You're fighting over words like that. But keyboard warrior stuff like that, man, people just say all kinds of. I read some of this stuff that goes on. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe. But when I got out of prison, it was the whole disrespect level that I had to like figure out. I had to like deal with. And it was interesting, like the last 6 months in prison, they sent me to this pre-release facility. It's called an in-prison therapeutic community. So just to give you a little taste of the violence thing. So the in-prison therapeutic community is a little prison in Kyle, Texas. It's got 600 and something inmates, and everybody's made parole, right? Everybody's going home. We all understand this about each other. We look at each other a different way now because that's a free man we're looking at in 6 months. But when you walk in the door of the Kyle unit, they give you as the date you're leaving. You read it out. Mine says Damon Joseph West, you will be discharged from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice on November 16, 2015. Reading your date changes you inside, man. That's like you're like a milk carton. You're gonna expire. Like I'm leaving, man. I'm leaving this prison. That's my day. I'm leaving. The next thing they hand you is a piece of paper called the Cardinal Rules. Cardinal Rules: no gangs, no gambling, no fighting. They took fighting off the table. Now this was the hardest 6 months I ever had to do, because remember, violence or the threat of violence in prison. That's the glue, man. That holds the whole thing together. Because when you're in prison, the threat of violence is the one thing that keeps everything in order, because there's consequences for every decision you make in there. There's a consequence for it. You bump into somebody, it could be the end of your life. You disrespect somebody, you have to back that up. So there's consequences. You steal someone's stuff, they may kill you. I'll tell you a story about the guy they caught stealing one time. So the consequences for anything you do is gone because there's no more violence. But what they're trying to do is detox you from prison. They want you to spend 6 months in a world where no one can fight each other anymore. And they'll encourage it, not encourage, but they know it's going to go on. The smallest dude in there that got picked on the most powerful guy in there now. Now he's spitting. You see these little guys spitting on people, calling you a bunch of hoes and stuff like that in your face, pushing people, slapping people, and you can't do anything about it, man. I mean, like right before I was about to leave that place, this dude named Antoine wanted to get a piece of me, man. And man, he came charging at me in the day room.
Want to reset your clock?
Push me on the ground. Yeah, man. Because if you get in a fight, you have to go back and finish your entire sentence, man.
Oh no,
I can't go back and finish 65. Antoine had like 3 years. I got 65.
So you got 65 and you got out in 7?
Yeah.
So tell us, I mean, I've heard you talk about this. Tell the audience how that happened. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. So after the fighting was over, the violence was over. That last fight with Blackjack, that's the last fight. That's the culmination of it all. So I had to figure out how to be a coffee bean. And I had some good help along the way. You know, I tell people all the time that your messengers in life, they often come in different forms. They don't look like you. They don't come from the same background as you, right? One's a black Muslim man in Dallas County Jail. Another one, this little Hispanic bank robber named Carlos serving life in my cell, you know? Proof that God can use any messenger to get through to you, but you have to be receptive to all of God's messengers to get all of his messages. Carlos was a great teacher, too. I had him as a cellmate for like the first year I was in prison. He eventually got rolled because he was smoking pot, but good dude. So, but Carlos and I are walking down the cell block one day. This is, you know, first couple months in prison. And I walk by this guy's cell, and this inmate's laying in his bunk, and he's reading a book, and he's got this mouse laying on the bunk next to him, like just chilling, like a little pet, like a little dog, you know? The mouse is like a dog, just hanging out. No leash, no nothing, right? And I'm like, elbow Carlos. I'm like, man, what's up with that? Carlos grabs me. He takes me back to the cell. First thing, he chews me out. Don't ever look at another man's cell. That's called window shopping. He said, nothing good can come from, because you're not supposed, if I'm looking in your cell, I'm looking for what to steal is the idea, right? They got all these rules in prison, man. I mean, like, you know, you ever see somebody in prison has a scar from their ear to their mouth? That means they were a snitch, or someone really thought they were a snitch and they scarred them for life. What you're hearing, you're telling. They connect your ear to your mouth. So there's all kinds of stuff in prison I had to learn, man. And Carlos is like, man, look, you're going to get yourself in a wreck looking in people's cells. But then he said, stay away from the men that have the mice. And I'm like, why? I mean, they got lice? Are they dirty or something? He said, no, it's the way they get the mice to obey them. He said they do that with people too. So he told me what they do. At night when the lights go out in prison, there's mice and roaches everywhere, right? So a guy that wants a pet mouse, he's got to catch the mouse first. So he lays a trap, potato chip bag, some peanut butter at the back. He's laying in his bunk. The bag's on the floor. And when the mouse goes into the bag, crinkles the bag. Bam. He reaches down, closes the top of the bag. Now he's got this little mouse running around, right? And it's a little 10 by 12 cell. It's got a bunk bed, desk, and a toilet, metal toilet. He takes the mouse out, walks a few steps over to the toilet, takes him out of the bag, throws him in the toilet, and drowns him. And now the mouse is trying to get out. He's fighting for his life. Imagine if you're drowning. You'll do anything, right, to get out. But his little claws can't catch on the metal toilet. It can't gain any purchase. So eventually the mouse lets go to die. And that's when the inmate reaches in and saves. And I got air quotes going on. Saves the mouse, right? Pulls him out, dries him off, blows on him, lets him smell him a lot, dries him off, feeds him, gives him water, lets him sleep, then takes him out the next day out of that bag, throws him in the toilet, and drowns him again. He does this for weeks, man, for maybe 2 weeks, until the mouse is finally convinced that the guy that throws him in isn't his tormentor, it's his savior. That's how you have to break a mouse. And that's when the mouse is broken, the mouse believes that guy is the guy that saves him, and he'll never leave his side. And you see that happen with people in life, too. People in relationships that, you know, you try to tell your friend, hey, you know, this person's using you. This person's manipulating you, but they don't see it because they've been broken, man. They're the mouse, you know. So that was really like an eye-opening experience because a lot of guys are very manipulative inside that prison environment. It's a very dangerous, predatorial place. And I went a different path, man. I went in there and I chose to be a coffee bean. I went in there and tried to work on myself. I got into a program recovery. I got into AA. I started taking action in my life because that's the thing about life, man. You got to take action. No one can take your action for you. And I was in that prison cell, in that dungeon. I'm like, man, no one's going to do this for me. I got to do it myself. So I just got up, man, every day. Days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years. But I started becoming that coffee bean inside that prison.
Did you impact other prisoners to be a coffee bean?
Yeah. So with one of the wardens, you know, they would watch you on the cameras and stuff like that all the time. So one of the wardens, I'm up for a job assignment. This is after the 5 years I'm getting off the life sentence building, and the wardens pull me upside. So you come up for a review at 5 years when you live with the lifers. They want the lifers on one building for 5 years. They want you on 7 buildings for 5 years. And you can't leave 7 building. It's an island. They don't want you to escape. They want you to get the fence off your mind. And the security is way tighter on 7 building than it is anywhere else. So after 5 years, you come up for a review, and now you can have a job because you can't have a job the first 5 years. You can't go to school. You can't do any of the other stuff inmates do because you have to be on that building. So at 5 years, I come up for my job review, and the warden, a guy named Warden Wallace, who, man, he's still a friend to this day. He's retired from TDCJ now. But he brings me in there, and, you know, he's like, you know, and he's going through my file. He's like, hey, look, West, I've been watching you, man. And, you know, I know about the stuff you're doing in the cell. One of the stuff that he was talking about I was doing is I was teaching the guys about the stock market, you know, because everybody's got value in this life. When you figure out what your value is, you become more valuable to society. And prison's just society, man. It's just a little world in there, right? It's a microcosm of the world outside. And so my value in there was my brains, because I had a different background. I didn't look like anybody else in there. I didn't speak like anybody else. I had different education level than everybody else. So I could be a teacher. And I'm watching these guys when the news comes on. The news is very serious in there. Everybody watched the news. But every time they would start talking about the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ, every guy in prison would kind of look down at the ground and just kind of shuffle their feet. So one day I would catch on. I'm like, wow. So I'll go up in front of the TV. I'm like, hey, do y'all know anything they're talking about up there? And I almost got my butt kicked over there. They're like, what, are you trying to make fun of us, white boy? I'm like, no, man. Yeah. But I can teach you what all that's about, because I used to be a stockbroker. Yeah. And, man, they were all like, yeah, we want to learn. They want knowledge, right? They're thirsty for knowledge. So I was teaching these guys about the market. And every week, one day a week in the newspaper, the stock market ticker would come out. These guys took it over, man. They started their own black market stock market with stuff off the commissary. You know, like coffee, soups, stamps. They're all like buying stocks and stuff with it, man. So they took off with it. You know, in prison, there's a lot of good business people in prison. You give me a good drug dealer, and I'll show you an entrepreneur, right? I'm serious. Take a guy that takes an ounce of a drug. Let's say an ounce.
All good entrepreneurs are addicted to something.
Yeah, right? But these guys can take an ounce of something, and let's say it's an ounce of cocaine, right? Yeah. And they break it up into eight different sections, an 8-ball, right? An eighth of an ounce, right? So you've got all these guys that know how to break up this mass quantity of a product, and they know which baggie breaks even. Then they know which baggie buys their next load. Then they know which baggie's buying load number 2. They are business people, man, but they're just not pointing in the right direction. And so that's what I was trying to do when I was in there is like, let me give you some guys some direction about this stuff. And the other thing I could do with guys in there is, you know, being a coffee bean is a lot about serving other people. You look for ways to serve other people. And so, you know, look, I couldn't take any college classes. I had a bachelor's degree already from North Texas, but I could teach other guys in there. And I started tutoring guys, teaching guys how to read, how to write, how to get them ready for the GED test so that one day, if they got out, they could be better family men, better husbands, better fathers to their kids too. So I tried to put back every way I could. If I saw trash on the ground in prison, man, I'd walk by, I'd pick it up. And I mean, people made fun of me, man. You Mark, you Buster, why are you picking up those people's trash? And I tell them, man, this is my home. And they're like, man, this isn't your home, Wes. This is prison. I said, dude, I get my mail here. This is home, man. Anywhere you get your mail, that's your house, dude. This is where I get my mail. I'm home. You know, I'm taking care of my home. But so the parole board, 7 years and 3 months into this thing, they come to visit me. And I'm up for parole. And the only reason I'm up for parole is because my crimes are non-aggravated. And the lady for parole is like, she's like, Mr. West, we just don't see a lot of people like you come through the system. You had it all. You had every advantage, every privilege, and every opportunity over everybody else your entire life. She said, but she said, you blew through all of your privileges. You became a drug addict. You became a criminal. You became a thief. She said, a jury in Dallas gave you life in prison for the things you did. She said, but instead of letting that life sentence define you, she said, you changed yourself inside this prison. She said, but more than that, you changed the entire prison around you. One man changed his prison. So my question for you today is this. She said, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all, she said, tell me what that would be in just one word, go. And I'm like, useful. I just want to be useful. And I can be useful in this prison, or I can be useful in that free world finding more coffee beans. I mean, guys, everybody wants to be useful in this life, man. As human beings, we want two things. We want to belong and we want to be loved. That's what human beings want at the end of every day. All this strife and drama you see going on right now, man, deep inside, everybody just wants to belong and be loved. But there's forces outside that keep us warring with each other. And as long as we let those forces win, we don't have the love in this world. And that's what I'm telling this lady, man. I want to be useful again. Yeah. November 16, 2015, man. A day I'll never forget because I walked out of prison that day. Yeah. And I'm not a free man. I mean, I'm on parole till 2073, right? So I got 50 more years on parole, and
you got to get everything approved to travel to do.
They got a short leash on me, and well, let me tell you another prison story, man. Walking out of prison, so I'm walking out of prison, man. So
I'm salivating over the prison. I know,
come on, man. I love this.
Yeah, so I'm walking out of prison, and the guards escort me out, and coming across the yard, this one guy's coming, man, making a beeline. The guard gets all tense. I was like, dude, just chill. That's my brother, man. And it was this guy named Sabor, another black Muslim guy from Dallas. But this guy is my age. He's different from Mr. Jackson. He's 47 right now, just like me. So Sabor's running across the yard. He wants to tell me bye. And I'm like, man, can I just go tell my brother bye? And the guard's like, man, make it quick. Please don't let anything happen, West. And so I go over there and I hug Sabor. He hugs me back. He's one of my favorite cellmates. Him and Carlos, my favorite cellmates, right? And so we're sitting there. We're talking. It's very emotional. And Carlos and Sabor's like, man, he said, West, I'm happy for you, man. I'm so excited. I'm happy for your family. He said, but I need to know something, man. He said, are you going to go out there and talk about what you saw in here, the stuff we talked about while we were cellmates in here? Now, what Sabor wants to know, am I going to go out and talk about things like social justice, about racism, about disparities in the system, you know, things that I learned a lot of when I listened to Sabor teach me about them when I was in prison. And I was like, man, Sabor, you know I will. When I get on my feet, you know I will. And what Sabor said to me became a call to action in my life, because his words hit me right between the eyes when he said, good. He said, sometimes they lock up the right guy. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, look at you, West. White, middle-class guy. You're well-spoken. Your family's waiting for you out there. You got a job at a law firm waiting for you. I had a job at a law firm waiting for me, man.
Insane.
And he said, people will listen to you. You're charismatic. People listen to you. You got to be the one to talk about what you saw in here, man, because you can be the change agent. You can make the difference. Now, what Sabor wanted me to talk about is about like racism, right? Because in order for racism to exist, there has to be an imbalance of power. That's racism. And racism means one race has more power over other races. That means they can write laws that affect where you live, the kind of schools you go to, the kind of America you grow up in. And in America, man, white people have that kind of power. That's why it's very difficult. It's very difficult for a white person to feel racism. White people can feel prejudice, but we can't feel racism, right? And it's not, we can't, not can't, but it's hard, it's difficult. Because racism and prejudice look the same, they feel the same, they stink the same, right? But a person's prejudice doesn't have any power over you. You can't lose your job over a person's prejudice, but racism, that has power to it, right? So I said most white people will never be able to experience that, but I have. I lived in a world for 7 years and 3 months where the color of my skin was no longer the advantage. I couldn't sit on the front row of benches in the day room the whole time I was there because I was born white, right? I got my butt kicked on the rec yard simply because of the way I was born, the melanin in my skin, right? So I got dipped in this world for 7 years and 3 months where I got to experience the other side of it. And so that's what Sabor is talking about. You have the power to go out there and tell this story, but I'm like, Sabor, you know, I've talked to Sabor since then, and this is coming up on the stuff that happened in 2020 and all the stuff that went on after the murder of George Floyd. And I'm like, hey, if we're going to have a conversation about racism, let's have a conversation about cancel culture too, because that's gone too far. And that's stopping us, by the way, from having a good conversation about racism in this country. And so here's what my formula is for this. So
let's go.
I believe that if we're gonna get rid of cancel culture and racism, let's do it at the same time. That means we're going to have a lot of white people that are being humble and willing to listen to learn what black and brown people are telling them about racism. That's going to take a lot of humility, because you're going to hear a lot of stuff as white people you don't want to be true. You don't think is true, but you've got to be willing to listen to what the other side says. Now, that's what white people are going to have to do. Black people, brown people, when you find one of these white people that's willing to listen and learn, you got to teach. And this is going to take a lot of grace on their part, because grace always costs the person giving it more than it costs the person who receives it. Grace is hard, man. Grace is a very hard thing to do. But when we can get back to this country and have humility and grace, racism and cancel culture have no place in our society again, man. That means we're communicating, we're talking, and we're willing to listen to what the other side has to say. And we don't cancel someone out because they don't say or do the right thing, because that's the grace part of it, man. If the other side has grace and says, hey, you know what? You may not say or do the right thing, but you don't know what you're talking about. So you're not going to lose everything in the process, because I'm going to teach you. But you're going to learn. And if you're going to learn, you're going to go out and spread the word. That's how you get to the end of it, man. You got to start having these difficult conversations with humility and grace, and have definitions, man. Words matter, man. If people get so hung up on that's racist, or no, racism is one thing, prejudice is another. They look and sound the same. One's got power, one doesn't. That's just the definitions of the stuff, man. But it took me going through a prison, man. I had to go fight Nazis and skinheads and Crips and Bloods to get to a position.
7 years.
Yeah, for 7 years to be in a position to even talk about this stuff, man. So, yeah, I get it, man.
And for listeners, some of y'all, this is in his book, The Locker Room. Also has another book, The Coffee Bean.
Yeah.
Another one, The Change Agent on
Agent.
his
Yeah.
life. So go pick up a copy of those. We have this theme that's happening on our podcast about entrepreneurs just starting. Just start now. So you get out of 2015, you get out.
Yeah.
You go take this job at a law firm. Now, I mean, it's 2023. We're texting. You're talking to Clemson. You're talking to Alabama. You're
on the top podcast
Yeah.
in the nation.
I know you've got a ton of momentum. That doesn't just, I mean, that's 8 years of work.
Sure.
So tell us how that happened.
Man, this is a great question, a great story behind this. So when I got out of prison, I knew I had this story to tell and the great message of the coffee bean, right? But I had to find audiences to speak to. And you can't just get out of prison and go knock on the door of a school and say, hey, I want to talk to your kids. I just got out of prison.
Yeah.
They'll lock you back up.
That's right.
So I had to find people that would believe in me. And here's the deal. Growth follows belief. Growth follows belief. You have to believe in yourself before other people will believe in you. Anybody that's an entrepreneur,
I love that
you
so
believed in
much.
yourself way before anybody else
We
believed
can,
in you,
we
man.
can both relate to
Yeah,
that.
you can relate to it, man. Everybody says you're crazy. Your family says you're crazy, but
Until it works.
until it works. You believe in yourself and you go for it, right? So I found another cop and a judge locally where I lived to believe in me, and they would take me into schools and stuff like that locally. But there just weren't a lot of places for me to go speak the first couple years I was out of prison. Rotary clubs, church groups, wherever. Anybody would have me speak, I go do it. I did it for free. And that's the thing I tell people all the time, man. When you're starting out this journey.
I had a feeling that he was doing this stuff for free.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to, man. You got to get in reps.
You got to get better.
Yeah, you got to get better, and you got to see what works as a speaker.
Yeah.
You got to test a lot of stuff. It was 3 or 4 months out of prison before I even used the coffee bean in a presentation. I didn't even know what my presentation was supposed to be like, you know.
You're just sharing stories.
And sharing stories, and then one day I'm like, "Why don't you throw the coffee bean in there?" And it meant
It is.
that's when I knew it. That was it. Wasn't just a moment; it was my brand. That was going to be my brand because that had the most power to it. And now I had a call to action, be a coffee bean, all that stuff. So for every day that I didn't have a presentation, those first 2 years I was in prison, in my parents' spare bedroom where I lived, because I lived with my parents the first 2 years I was out of prison, they had a mirror in there. And it just happened to be there when I moved in. So every day that I didn't have a presentation, which was most days for 2 years, I practiced my presentation in front of that mirror. I got in my rep every day. I didn't miss a day because consistency is key, man. Consistency trumps everything, man. You get consistent, you get good at what you're doing. And I practiced the same presentation I have today for 2 years in front of that mirror, waiting for my chance. And here's where my chance came. It was January 12th, 2017. I'm out of prison 14 months. Got my cush job working at a law firm. I'm making just above minimum wage, which could be a comfortable life for a guy just out of prison, right?
Living with his parents too.
Yeah,
right?
man.
I mean,
Good.
not a lot
Everything's
of
going good. I
expenses.
don't have a girlfriend yet, but it's good.
Your bar is set
but I'm
low
not in
at
prison.
that
Yeah, man. I'm not in prison. That's my bar. Every day that I wake up,
right.
my feet don't hit the cold concrete floor of the prison. I'm winning, man. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm winning. But I got perspective when a bad day, and we all have perspective. Bad days are days that a job is lost, a marriage fails, a child dies, someone gets hurt, someone gets killed. Those are bad days. Most of our days aren't bad days, right? But we get so caught up in our day. So January 12th, 2017, I'm at my desk at the law firm, and a buddy of mine in Houston calls, and he says, hey, Damon, get down here to Houston. Houston's 90 miles away. Get down here to Houston. He said the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year Awards tonight. They're going to name the best college football coach in America. He said the 8 best coaches in the country in this room. He said, I got an extra press pass. You want to go? He works with media. Man, you bet I want to go. So I drive the 90 miles from Beaumont to Houston after work, and I'm practicing my elevator pitch. What I'm going to tell these coaches when I finally see them, because I haven't seen any coaches like that. It's my shot.
Yeah.
He sneaks me in the back door to Toyota Center, and I'm on my own. There I am. I'm on the floor. Wisconsin, USC, Penn State, PJ Fleck. They're all there. And I'm running around this room. I'm shaking their hands. I'm going up to these coaches. I'm like, man, this is why you got to bring me in and speak to your team. And every coach I meet that night slams the door in my face. Man, they all told me no. Don't call us. We'll call you. 1 hour, I've been told no 7 times by the 8 coaches that are there. That's a no every 8 minutes. I'm in the corner of the Toyota Center, licking my wounds, feeling sorry for myself. And the voice in my head is screaming at me, go home. Get out of here. You're an imposter. You don't belong. There's anybody ever had that imposter voice, the fear voice talking to you?
We call that your inner thief.
Yeah.
On Inner Pump.
Yeah. That's your inner thief. And
Yes,
the inner thief is screaming at me. Did you think they were going to say yes? You're stupid. Why did you end up here? You're dumb.
Shouldn't have driven here.
Shouldn't have driven here. You wasted your time. Go home. But man, let me tell you something I quit doing a long time ago, listening to myself. I don't listen to myself. I talk to myself.
Come
There we
on.
go. I love that.
And you should
Love
too,
that.
because the voice in your head can be fear. And you better really control what goes on inside your head, because that's the voice you hear more than any other voice your whole life. So, man, I'm pumping myself back up. Nah, Damon,
Speaking
you're not
our
going
language.
anywhere, man.
Whoa.
You're not going anywhere,
Man,
man.
I'm ready to run through a
I know.
wall.
Let's go.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere, Damon. That last coach is going to tell you no to your face. And y'all, the last coach, his team just beat Alabama 2 nights before for the national championship. Everybody wants a piece of this man's time. So, man, I stalked Dabo Swinney around that room, and I look like a nut, man. I'm hiding behind fake plants. I'm weaving in and out of tables, man, and I'm eavesdropping every conversation. I'm waiting for my chance to jump in, man. He sees me on some of these things, but security sees me too. They're gonna take me away soon. So I pounce on Dabo, man. I finally get Dabo on. I pounce on Dabo. I'm like, man, I give him my best stuff for about a minute. And I come up for air, and Dabo's like, man, you got a card on you? And I'm like, yeah, I gave him my card. And he said, I'll check you out. And he takes off. No eye contact, no nothing. It's a no. It looks like a no, feels like a no. But let me tell you what I felt good about that last no, because I left it all in the field that night. And that's what it's all about, man. It's about giving it your best effort. That's what we learned in sports when we were younger. Sometimes you're going to come up short. That's okay. Or Jackson. You don't have to win all your fights, but you got to fight all your fights. I fought all my fights at night. Or in sales, man. Sales, you knock on every door. You make every call. That's when your day is over. I went home, slept like a baby.
Yeah, peace of mind.
Forgot about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that night, man. It just one of those losses I took, right? 4 months later, I'm at work at the law firm. I get an email. It's a director of football operations at Clemson. A guy named Mike Dooley. He says, hey, Damon, Coach Swinney met you at your award show in Houston. He'd love to have you come talk to the team. Do you have August 1st open? Dude, I got every first open, man. I got this
I'm
first,
there.
next first.
Don't tell me a time. I'm there.
So, yeah. So,
Actually, you might need a time for parole.
yeah.
Yeah, I gotta
I had
tell
to
my
get a travel
guy.
permit. Yeah, I did have to get a travel permit, and parole was like, yeah, right. You're going to Clemson. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to
it's
Clemson.
real, it's real.
My
My first,
Yeah.
that was your first big gig, huh?
first in front of a college football coach like that size. Yeah, man. Yeah. So August 1st, 2017, I go speak to the Clemson Tigers, the defending national champions of college football, man. And when I get done with my presentation that night, Dabo's in my face, man. Dabo's a very high energy guy. He's like, that's the most amazing story I've ever heard. He said, I've never seen my players respond like that to a speaker's story. He said, have you been to Alabama yet? I'm like, no, I've been to Clemson. I hadn't been anywhere, dude. He said, man, I just text Nick Saban from the back of the room. We'll see what happens, man. When I landed in Houston the next morning for my trip to Clemson, I got to turn on my phone. I got a voicemail to text message from the director of football operations at University of Alabama. We'll see you in Tuscaloosa in 3 weeks. August 21st, 7:30 p.m. There's your window of opportunity. Just like that, Dabo Swinney kicked open the biggest door to college football. And Dabo doesn't stop there, man. Kirby Smart starts calling. Lincoln Riley's calling. All these coaches are calling my phone. But the real magic in my life happened 1 year after that presentation at Clemson. It was August of 2018. I was at my desk at the law firm. I don't work at the law firm anymore. But I was at my desk at the law firm that day, and my cell phone rings. On the other end of my cell phone is a guy named John Gordon. John Gordon, man. One of
The energy bus guy.
the energy bus guy. One of the biggest motivational speakers and authors in the world,
Yeah.
man. This guy, I follow this guy on Twitter for my inspiration every day, and he's on my phone. I'm like, John, man, I know who you are. How do you know who I am? And he said, Dabo Swinney. He said, I just got done speaking to Clemson's football team. Dabo brings me in the office for 30 minutes. He tells me your whole story. He said, but Damon, he told me the story of the coffee bean. He said, I've never heard the coffee bean before. I don't know where you came from, man. But he said, the world needs the coffee bean message, Damon. Let's deliver it to the world. So he said, will you write a book with me? We'll call it The Coffee Bean. And so the summer of 2019, exactly 10 years after Mr. Jackson told me the story of the coffee bean in Dallas County Jail in the summer of 2009, the book, The Coffee Bean, comes out and my life changes forever because that book launched me to a different atmosphere. It's sold 500,000 copies in America. It's in every language in the world: Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, French, Italian, German. All those countries have that book on their shelf. But it all goes back to that one night in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
January 12th, 2017.
Just one conversation.
I'm in the corner of the Toyota Center licking my wounds, feeling sorry for myself. And the voice in my head, if I listen to the voice in my head that night and walk out that door like the voice told me to, we're not having this conversation today.
So many business related. I mean, it's so relatable. We were just talking about on the last episode how a lot of folks view, a lot of entrepreneurs, salespeople, whoever view a customer as linear.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how that one customer, you got to look at that as a market. That's a whole marketplace.
Absolutely.
Your impact, full speed, even if you break even on cost or you lose a little, but if you are willing to make an impact on that person, you unlocked everything from that one conversation.
Absolutely.
And then you just show up and execute.
And as a speaker, that's what you do, man. When you go into a room to speak and you're doing this for a living and professionally, you're sitting there speaking, and you're like, you know what? My next 4 presentations are in this room. They just don't know it yet. They're going to be in there somewhere, and that's what you're trying to. You're trying to go out there and blow these people away, bring the same energy every time. And you know, my life changed on January 12th, 2017 by sticking around that room. And I tell people all the time, you know, especially salespeople, people that are entrepreneurs, don't give up. Don't give up before the miracle happens, because you never know where your Dabo Sweeney moment is, but you know where it's not. Because the only question you know the answer to is the one you don't ask. That's a no. Every time. You don't ask the question, you got to know every time. So ask your questions. Take your shots, man.
So good.
Damn, all I keep hearing is just the verse that inspired our brand. John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come to give you life and life more full. And it's like, at that moment, if you listen to that inner thief, you wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
And then let's take it back some more. If you wouldn't listen to D, you wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
And if you didn't listen to Mr. Jackson, you wouldn't be here right now, man. So it's just crazy how God keeps showing up, keeps showing up, keeps showing up.
And that's the thing about life, man. These messengers are waiting there for you, but you have to be receptive to all of his messengers to get all of his messages. Because the minute you turn yourself off to someone because they don't look like you, they don't come from the same background as you, the same America as you, then you've cut yourself off from a potential messenger that has a message that changes your life.
Freaking life.
You got to be receptive to everybody. Be accepting of everybody. Be tolerant of other people, man. And lead with love, man. That's what we're missing so much of in this country. Right now in this country, the mental workout is what I think so many people are failing at. Because the mental workout's every book you read, it's every video you watch, the website you go to, your social media feed. Who are you following? What are they posting? What are you posting? And what are you watching for TV inside your homes? You watching something that calls itself news? Is people screaming at each other, telling you to fear everybody around you? It's not news. It's negative entertainment. Turn it off, man. I don't care if it comes from the left or the right, man. Turn it off. It's poisoning you. It's poisoning your family. It's poisoning this country. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, man.
Come on.
Yeah, we were talking about leadership on our last episode. I know you've got a passion for servant leadership. I want to hear you talk a little bit about that. This is a personal question.
Servant leadership is defined to me from this guy named Joe Tatoris that became my first mentor when I got out of prison. Joe Tatoris is the guy that founded Jason's Deli. And Jason's Deli started in Beaumont, Texas. And Joe Tatoris would be in the prison chapel every Monday night. He loved being around the cursed, the wicked, the sinners, the incarcerated. He's a chaplain volunteer, the guy that started Jason Deli, multi-millionaire guy. So I get out of prison, I find Joe, and I'm like, Joe, I need a mentor. He's like, man, I'd be happy to do it. And so I'm like, all right, well, tell me about servant leadership. You talked about servant leadership. And so he told me where he first learned about servant leadership. It was 1995. He said he was at a business symposium at Texas A&M. And the speaker that day was a guy named David Glass. And David Glass was the first CEO of Walmart, the guy that Sam Walton handpicked to take over when he stepped down. He said David Glass gave a presentation that day called Servant Leadership. And servant leadership, David Glass said, was helping other people reach their goals in life, helping to raise other people up to a different station in life. Because when we're helping other people, that's when we're at our best. That's how we grow too. And Joe realized that he had it all wrong. He couldn't figure it out up until that day of why he wasn't happy, because he was making money hand over fist. They were expanding Jason's Delis all throughout the country. But he realized that he didn't understand what a servant and a leader was. And he thought a servant was someone that does menial tasks. They sweep the floors, they carry the towel. And a leader just watches his servants work. Joe had it wrong. David Glass said, you got to help those other people reach their level in life, help raise them up. And so that's what Joe did. He started going and changed the way Jason's Deli did business. And man, you go to Jason's Delis all over the country now, and you go to the counter and ask for the manager on duty, ask him who the longest employee in there is. 15 years, 25 years, 35 years. I met a guy that's worked at Jason's Deli for 40 years at a sandwich shop. That's servant leadership, man. That's a culture.
It's a culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And servant leadership is, part of being a servant leader is being vulnerable, man. Vulnerability is a strength. Vulnerability gets a bad rap. But, man, that's letting people connect with you on a different level, man. Because once you do that, people connect with you.
Build
then
trust.
you'll get the best out of them, and the best of you, too. Right. So, being a servant leader, man, a big part of my life of that is going back into prisons, man. I go back into prisons all the time. Because today I'm Andy Dufresne. I'm the Andy Dufresne for every man and woman in prison. I'm the guy that brings hope because I'm the guy that showed it can be done, right? Yeah. But I've got to go out there and show them. I got to let them see that. I've got to make the time in my life to volunteer to go inside those prisons as much as I can so they can see that. They can feel that. They can dream of being me one day, Because everybody has to have hope. Everybody needs hope. And I have a prison curriculum, and I try to bring a big speaker in from my world every 4 months when I graduate a class in this prison in Huntsville called the WIN Unit. I brought Dak in there one time. So I brought the Cowboy quarterback in there. I brought Rudy in there a couple months ago. Rudy from the real movie, the movie Rudy,
The Rudy.
the real Rudy. Yeah. I mean, these guys when they saw Rudy come in the chapel, they started chanting Rudy, Rudy. Made the hair stand up on my arms. I thought they were going to pick him up and carry him out. You know, and he's a little bitty guy. Rudy's a good guy. But the next class I graduated, and I just talked to her yesterday in the fun. I'm gonna have a female speaker this time, Muhammad Ali's daughter. Yes.
Wow.
These guys are going to flip out when they see Muhammad Ali's daughter, man. And she was like, man, Damon, this is such an honor. My dad would be so proud that I'm going to a prison. I'm talking to Muhammad Ali's daughter, man. The man, man. So
it's because you're genuine, right? I mean, that's what people can feel. And that's that servant leader. That's what I wanted. A total selfish question. So go ahead.
You're good,
I know
bro. You're
got
good.
one.
No, you're
he
good,
wants to
bro.
know what the Jackson thing
Yeah,
is. He's jealous. But no, it's servant leadership's great because that's what we should all aspire to be. And in my presentations, that's the thing that I say is a secret to life. Serving other people, because when we're helping other people, that's when we're at our best. That's how we grow. And look, anytime you feel like you're having a tough time in life, go out and serve someone else, man. Bury yourself in someone else's problems when you feel like your problems are too much. Somebody told me one time at an AA meeting, if we could all throw our problems onto a pile, then we could go up to that pile and pick up someone else's problem. You know what we'd go pick up? Our own problem again. After you see what everybody else is struggling with in life, you'll throw your own problem right over your shoulder and say, man, like, I don't want your problems. So everybody's struggling. Look for ways to serve others and be kind. Mr. Jackson. So so his real name isn't Mr. Jackson. I gave him that name for the sake of the story. The only name I knew this guy by in county jail was Muhammad. Because when a guy goes to prison and converts to Islam, they get rid of their real name and take on a Muslim name. Kind of like this guy named Cassius Clay did in the 1960s. He walked out of prison as Muhammad Ali. So this guy was no different. So when I get out of prison in 2015, I go back to Dallas County Jail. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to find my friend Muhammad. And they're like, Mr. West, we need a real name or a birthday. We can't find this guy on a Muslim name. So I went home empty-handed. And I live in Southeast Texas, y'all. There is no way in the part of Texas I live in that I'm like, hey, I just got out of prison. And Muhammad told me this and Muhammad told me that. It's not going to fly, man. I said to give him a new name, so I gave him the name Mr. Jackson, and everybody loved Mr. Jackson, but more importantly, people were picking up Mr. Jackson's message, and the coffee bean was changing lives. But still, I had to hope that one day he would find me, and here's how he found me. So I get a letter from an inmate last summer in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I told you, I get a lot of inmate mail. I'm Andy Dufresne, man.
Well, you were big on sending or getting mail when you were in prison too. It's like you're a celebrity if you get mail, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to get mail because everybody's watching.
You're popular.
Well, people watch predators watch mail call. Yeah. If they watch a guy that never gets mail after about 6 months of that, that's who they're going to rape. That's who they're going to go after because he's not connected to anybody in the outside world.
When I heard that, I didn't know that.
Guys in prison, to avoid this from the predators, they will write themselves a letter, stick it in the mailbox in the morning when they go to first chow, and 2 days later that letter will come back. They would get their name called at mail call, just so it looks like they're connected to somebody in the free world.
It's an entirely different code.
It's a whole different code, man. It's a whole different world. It was like waking up in a petri dish, and there was a giant sociological experiment, man. And the thing about prison, man, is that prison is it's a microcosm of what the world is. Here's the deal: prison is what the free world is. If you take all the brakes off and all the rules and regulations, and you just say everybody gets to go be how they want to be, human beings are tribal, man. We would break up into tribes again. We would go back into dark ages type stuff if you took the brakes off society. That's what prison is. Prison is tribal. When you're breaking off by the color of your skin, by your race, that's tribal, man. That's what the danger is. Like when you look at a world where you lose your freedoms, you know, people talk about living in a communist country. I lived in a communist country. It's called prison. 3 times a day, you go to a meal line where the state's going to feed you a meal. Every morning, you go to a laundry line where you take your dirty underwear, your dirty socks, you stick it through one hole in the wall, and some other guy on the other side sticks his hand through the wall, and he has a clean pair of socks and clean pair of underwear. That's socialism, man. You're sharing underwear, man. That's prison. If the state decides they're not going to feed you one day, you starve.
You don't eat.
Because you become a part of the state. I was a part of the state. I lived in a communist country, man. I know what it's like to live in a communist country, man. Prison is a socialist society. That's what it is, man. So, yeah. So, Mr. Jackson, I get a letter from this inmate, and it's got one sentence in this letter, no return address. It said, "Find James Lynn Baker, and you find Mr. Jackson." I'm like, man, that's a clue. So I go to Dallas. I come up here to Dallas.
It's God. I'm telling you, this is God.
So this is the guy that I'm telling you about. Had to have heard the coffee bean before, because I've got all my books in prison. I write in the prison newspaper. Yeah. I'm always talking about Mr. Jackson when I go into prison, hoping that, you know, if he's in there, he'll hear it or somebody will hear it, and my message got received. Somebody that heard my message knew who he was because of the coffee bean, right?
Come on.
Yeah.
That's the only way they know. So I come up to Dallas, get a private investigator. We find his criminal record, matched everything he said, in and out of prison his entire life. Had him in Dallas County Jail in 2009 when I was there. So I know it's my guy, and I'm getting excited, to be honest with y'all, because I get to see my buddy again.
Yeah.
But I never saw him again because Mr. Jackson, James Lynn Baker II, died on May 9th, 2017. He died of an opiate overdose. Drug addict, just like me. But he never got into a program recovery. He never got help for his addiction. Here's the warning on this. This man was sitting on the coffee bean message his entire life, but he couldn't use it. He couldn't apply it. You can sit on all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't apply the knowledge, it does no good to have that knowledge.
Wow.
Man.
He died of an opiate overdose with the coffee bean, in and out of prison his entire life. He never could apply it in his own life, but he found someone that could. And so my job at that point was to go find his family to honor him, because I got to do something. Because if he's not in my life, I'm not here with y'all. The world doesn't have the coffee bean message. So I find his family, and his family's dynamic. His sister, Von Seal Baker, was the very first Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, 1972. It's a black woman, very first Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. His mother was the first licensed black daycare owner in Dallas. Right down in South Dallas was the first black daycare. It's the home he grew up in. It's a landmark. The home he grew up in is a city landmark here in Dallas. Yeah. This guy comes from like royalty, right? So the private investigator sets up a phone call with the three living sisters, Visha, Von Seal, and Vanessa Baker. And I call them up one night. I'm like, hey, listen, I told them a story about the time I met their brother in Dallas County Jail in the summer of 2009 and the message he gave me and what I've been able to do in my life with that message in prison and out of prison. And I told these three sisters, listen, I don't know what your feelings are about your brother and the choices that he made in his life, but I need you to understand something. Your brother impacted at least one person while he was on this planet, and that one person is going to impact the entire planet with the message he gave me. So I said, what high school did y'all go to? He told me it was from the inner city when I saw him in 2009, right? They confirmed it. Dallas Lincoln High School. Dallas Lincoln is it's inner city and urban as you're going to get in Dallas. That's South Dallas, man. So I said, great. Here's what I want to do at Dallas Lincoln High School. I said, I'm gonna put $10,000 every year into a trust for a scholarship in your brother's name. We'll call it the James Lynn Baker II Be a Coffee Bean Scholarship. And I would love for your family to pick the winner of that scholarship every year. So that every year, one little boy or one little girl that grows up in his old neighborhood, goes to his old high school, is going to get a better chance at life through an education, because these two guys met up in Dallas County Jail in the summer of 2009. And y'all, the family picked the first scholarship recipient this past May. This little girl named Megan Loving. Megan's mother is a school teacher. Her dad's a disabled veteran. And right now, she's a Texas A&M Aggie going to be an engineer one day.
Oh my God,
Isn't that wild, man?
I had never
Finally
heard
found
that.
Mr. Jackson, man. So, yeah, and that's the thing. And look, entrepreneurs, everybody out there, look, your goals sometimes take longer than others. It took me 7 years to find this guy. And it had to be an act of God for me to even find him. It took me 7 years to get out of prison. That's a big act of God. Sometimes your goals are going to take long. Here's the best piece of advice I got from John Gordon. Well, one of the best. John gives me good advice. John says, listen, Damon, you're going to be known as the coffee bean guy. And the coffee bean guy is going to be something really big to be known as if you stick with your message. Be a coffee bean. That's your message. Don't ever stop using that message. He said, because one day if you keep using it over and over again, people will know you as the coffee bean guy. And that'll be a big deal. And he said, I'm known as the energy bus guy. And that's a pretty big deal for
This
me.
is the first thing I thought of.
Yeah. And so he said, but what happens with people so often is they don't see the results fast enough for what they're trying to do, right? They give up. They stop. They change the message midstream, right? 2 years, 3 years ago, I don't see the results. They change their message. Now you've confused everybody. Are you the coffee bean guy or are you this other guy? Stick with your message. Stick it out. It's going to take a while, but once it gets hold, it'll take off. And I'm in that moment right now. I'm living in the momentum of what keeping my message the same thing over and over again for years and not seeing results at first, but stick with it. If you know it's your message, you believe in it, stick with it.
I think this was for me. I think this is what God wanted me to hear this today, because I
Good,
needed
man.
that information most. So
Well,
yeah,
dude, that goes into my prayer. Every morning I say the same prayer, man. This is the only thing I pray for every day. And whatever religion you are listening to this, you can pray this prayer too. I get up in the morning, I ask God for two things. God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize it when I see it, because I don't want to miss whatever that is. Amen. So maybe that's what it was.
yeah, no, it definitely was. And I just want to say, man, God has done something amazing with your life, and I mean, it's a testament just to everything you've said today. And I'm just
I'm
just
gonna
lost
have
for
him
words, man.
speak
'cause-
to commit. I already told him that. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better person to speak to the group of people that I work with It's amazing. And if anybody wants to inspire their team, salespeople, family, anybody, reach out to
Please.
Damon.
Where do they find you?
DamonWest.org, DamonWest.org. At Damon West 7, Instagram and Twitter, and my books can be found anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, whatever, man.
That's awesome.
Amen. Well, Damon, thank you so much for blessing us.
I don't know how I go to sleep now.
Yeah, I know.
Let's go run through the wall.
Nah, I still got the cleats, man. We got to put them on. We got to go rest
Well,
some
you said
routes.
you could throw it 65.
That's what I'm trying to say. Let's go.
Let me get warmed up.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for today, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you so
awesome.
much. All right, man. We out, baby. Interpump. Peace.
I never mess up the commas. You know I put that on my mom. Well, that's all we got for this episode of Interpump. One thing that would really help both of us and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Also, make sure to check us out at interpump.com on social media. And if you enjoyed this episode and received anything of value, please share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Until next time, we out, baby. Interpump. Peace.